You've been trying to learn English for months, maybe years.
And you still freeze when you need to speak.
You feel stuck, embarrassed, and part of you wants to quit forever. I get it. I was you. But what if I told you the problem isn't your grammar or your vocabulary? The problem is a question you've never asked yourself. Stay with me for 90 minutes. By the end of the story, you won't just learn English. You'll learn how to love yourself enough to speak. The question that changes everything. Imagine someone walks up to you right now, looks you in the eye, and asks, "Are you balanced?" Not "How are you?" Not "Are you happy?" But balanced. Your brain freezes for a second, doesn't it? Because you have no idea how to answer. You check your mental inbox. Work,
Messy.
love, complicated. English learning?
Ha.
You've watched 1,000 videos, repeated 1,000 phrases, and still when a native speaker talks to you, your throat clogs up like a sink full of old coffee grounds. Let me tell you a secret. That freeze, the one where your mouth opens and nothing comes out, it's not a language problem. It's a balance problem. What matters is that 5 years ago, I was that person. The one who smiled and nodded while understanding nothing. The one who went home and cried because I should be better by now. The one who thought love meant losing myself so the other person would stay. Spoiler alert, that didn't work. I came to America with a suitcase full of hope and a brain full of Vietnamese politeness. I thought if I worked hard enough, studied hard enough, loved hard enough, someone would hand me a certificate that said, "Congratulations. You are now a real English speaker." But America doesn't work like that. And neither does love. Here's what nobody tells you. Your brain, that beautiful, squishy computer inside your skull, hates two things more than anything else: uncertainty and shame. When you try to speak English and fail, your brain doesn't just feel embarrassed. It feels threatened, like a tiger is about to eat you. It's the calm spot in the middle of the storm where your brain finally says, "Okay, I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be present."
I didn't know that then.
I thought I had to be perfect.
Flawless grammar. No accent.
Every verb tense correct. Do you know what that did to me? It made me so afraid of making mistakes that I stopped speaking altogether. I became the quietest person in every room.
People thought I was shy.
I wasn't shy. I was terrified. And then love made it worse. Because when you're terrified of being wrong in English, and you fall in love with someone who speaks English as their first language, oh boy, that's a recipe for self-destruction. You start agreeing to things you don't understand. You say yes when you mean no. You smile when you want to scream. Because at least if you're agreeable, they won't leave you, right?
Wrong.
So here we are, at the beginning of a 90-minute journey that will take you through my real life. Not a textbook, not a lecture, not a boring grammar lesson. I'm going to tell you how independence in America taught me balance and love. How I stopped losing myself. How I learned to speak English not perfectly, but freely. And how you can do the same. But first, you have to answer that question honestly. Not for me. For yourself. Are you balanced? If your answer is I don't know or no, or what does that even mean? Good. You're exactly where you need to be. Let's begin. My American life right now. Let me paint you a picture of my life today. Not 5 years ago. Not the confused, terrified version of me who couldn't order coffee without sweating. Today. I'm sitting on a worn-out couch in a suburban house outside a mid-sized American city. To my left, a pile of laundry that has been almost folded for 3 days. To my right, a half-empty mug of coffee that went cold 2 hours ago because I kept reheating it and then forgetting it again. Somewhere in the next room, my 2 kids are arguing over who gets the blue cup. Not screaming. Just my husband, American, patient, and annoyingly calm, is trying to mediate while also answering work emails. And me, I'm writing this script. In English. Without panic. If you had told the old me, the one who cried in her car after every conversation, that one day I would sit down and create content in English for an audience of thousands, I would have laughed, then cried, then laughed again because crying was getting old. But here's the thing nobody films for YouTube. My life is not a highlight reel. This morning, I forgot the word refrigerator. I stood in front of the open fridge, pointed at it, and said to my husband that the cold box, the big white cold box. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "You mean the refrigerator?" And we moved on.
No judgment. No correction lecture.
Just life. I would have spiraled.
See?
You'll never be fluent. You're a fraud. Everyone can tell you're not from here. And my American husband thinks it's adorable, which honestly is a win-win. So what changed? Not my vocabulary, not my accent, my balance. Let me explain what balance looks like in real life, not in a self-help book. Balance is not 50 to 50. It's not half your time on yourself, half your time on others. That's math, not life. Balance is the ability to hold two opposite things at the same time. Like, I love my family deeply, and I need time alone to not lose my mind. Like, I want to improve my English, and I accept that I will make mistakes forever. Like, I am fiercely independent, and I let my husband take care of me when I'm tired. Before America, I didn't know how to hold opposites. I only knew how to pick one side. If I loved someone, I gave everything. My time, my energy, my opinions, my identity. I became a mirror reflecting what they wanted. If they liked spicy food, I liked spicy food. If they wanted to stay home, I didn't mention I wanted to go out. If they said something hurtful, I told myself I was being too sensitive. That's not love. That's a hostage situation. And here's the messed up part. I thought that was virtue. I thought sacrificing myself was proof of how much I cared. My Vietnamese upbringing whispered, "Good women put others first. Good women don't complain. Good women endure." So I endured and endured until one day I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. She had my face, but her eyes were empty. America didn't fix me. That's not how countries work. But America gave me something my old culture never did. Permission to be a little bit selfish. Not screw everyone else selfish. But I matter too selfish. The first time my husband, back when he was just my boyfriend, said to me, "You need to tell me what you want, because I can't read your mind," I almost cried. Not because he was mean. Because no one had ever said that to me before. In my old life, saying what you want was considered rude, demanding, unfeminine. But he wasn't being rude. He was being American.
Direct. Honest.
And honestly, it saved my life. Because when you don't say what you want, two things happen. First, you never get what you want. Second, you build a quiet mountain of resentment that eventually buries the relationship. I've seen marriages die that way. Two people living in the same house, eating at the same table, sleeping in the same bed, but secretly furious because neither one feels seen. My husband and I fight. Not the dramatic, throw plates kind of fight. I'm frustrated and I need to walk away for 20 minutes kind of fight. And here's the weird part. I'm grateful for those fights. Because every time we disagree and then come back to talk, we're practicing balance. We're saying, my feelings matter and your feelings matter. Now, let's find the middle. That's the independence America taught me. Not the independence to leave. The independence to stay without disappearing. You want to know what my daily life looks like?
Okay.
Here's a Tuesday. 6:30 a.m. Wake up before the kids. Drink my coffee in silence for 15 minutes. No phone. No talking. Just me and the steam rising from the mug.
7 Uhr am Chaos.
Breakfast. Backpacks, lost shoes, someone crying because the banana broke. The banana broke. This is a real tragedy in a 5-year-old's world. 8:30 a.m., kids at school. I sit down to work. I run a small online business. All in English. Emails, customer service, social media. Sometimes I still use Grammarly.
Nos jam.
12 p.m., lunch alone. I watch an American TV show without subtitles. I understand about 85%. The other 15% I guess from context. That's fine. 2 p.m. Pick up kids. Homework. Snacks. More negotiation over the blue cup. 4 p.m. My husband comes home. We debrief. He tells me about his day. I tell him about mine. We don't solve each other's problems. We just listen. 7 p.m., kids in bed. I read for an hour. Sometimes in English. Sometimes in Vietnamese. Both belong to me now. 10 p.m., sleep. And do it all again.
Thrilling, right?
Not exactly Hollywood. But here's what you need to see. Every single one of those ordinary moments requires balance. Every time I choose silence instead of scrolling my phone, I'm balancing. Every time I accept that I understand 85% of the TV show and don't rewind the other 15% obsessively, I'm balancing. Every time my husband and I disagree, and I don't apologize just to end the fight, I'm balancing. Balance is not a destination. It's 1,000 small decisions. Every day. Forever. And English? English is just the language I use to make those decisions. It's not the goal. It's the tool. The goal is connection. The goal is love. The goal is to look at myself in the mirror and see a whole person, not half of someone else.
So let me ask you again.
Not the old you. Not the frustrated you.
The you who is watching this video right now.
Are you balanced? If you said no, or if you hesitated, you're in the right place. Because the next 10 sections of this story are going to show you exactly how I went from an empty-eyed woman in a foreign country to someone who can laugh about saying cold box instead of refrigerator. And I'll teach you English along the way.
Slowly. Gently.
Without shame. Because the only way to learn a language is the same way you learn to love. You stop trying to be perfect, and you start trying to be present. Ready? Good. Let's keep going. The trap of losing myself. Let me tell you about the first time I realized I had disappeared. I was standing in front of a bathroom mirror in a small apartment in California. Not my apartment. His. The man I was dating at the time. Let's call him Mark. Not his real name, but honestly, he was such a Mark. The mirror had one of those fluorescent lights that makes everyone look like a tired zombie. And under that terrible light, I saw a woman I didn't know. She had my face, my hair, my hands, but her eyes were flat, empty, like someone had scooped out everything that made her her and left only the shell.
I stared for a long time.
Long enough that my reflection started to feel like a stranger staring back. How did I get here? 3 months earlier, I had been so excited. Mark was handsome, confident, American-born with a smile that made waitresses give us free dessert.
He liked me.
He actually liked me. And I, fresh off the boat and desperate to prove I belonged, fell into him like a brick into a swimming pool.
Splash.
No more air. Here's what I didn't know then. When you're desperate to be loved, you'll do anything to keep it. Anything. And that anything is a one-way ticket to losing yourself. It started small. He didn't like spicy food. I love spicy food. But one night I said, "Oh, I don't really like spicy either."
Lie.
He loved hiking. I hate hiking. But I bought hiking boots and pretended to enjoy being eaten alive by mosquitoes. He thought my Vietnamese music was interesting but weird. I stopped playing it when he was around. Small things. Tiny betrayals. Each one no bigger than a paper cut. But paper cuts add up. And after a while, you're bleeding from 1,000 little wounds and you don't even remember how it started. The bigger things came later. He didn't like my friends. They talk too much, he said. They're too loud. So, I stopped seeing them. He didn't like my accent. Can you try to sound more American? So I started practicing my Rs and Ths obsessively, recording myself on my phone until my jaw hurt. He didn't like my opinions. When I disagreed with him about politics or movies or where to eat dinner, he would get quiet. Not angry, just quiet. So I stopped having opinions. Do you see what happened? I didn't lose myself all at once. I handed myself over, piece by piece, like someone slowly selling their furniture until the house is empty. And here's the crazy part. I thought this was love. I really did. My brain had learned a terrible lesson somewhere along the way. Love means sacrifice. The more you sacrifice, the more you love. That lesson came from movies, from songs, from my grandmother's stories about enduring hardship for family. But nobody told me there's a difference between healthy sacrifice and self-annihilation. Healthy sacrifice is, I'll watch your boring documentary because you watched my rom-com last week. Self-annihilation is, I will change my personality, my preferences, my voice, my identity so you never have a single reason to leave. Guess which one I was doing? The science. Your brain has something called the attachment system. It evolved millions of years ago to keep you close to the people who keep you alive. Back in cave times, if your tribe rejected you, you literally died. Alone, no food, eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So your brain learned, rejection equals death. Fast forward to today. You're not going to be eaten by a tiger if your boyfriend disapproves of your music taste. But your ancient cave brain doesn't know that. It feels the threat of rejection and hits the panic button. And the fastest way to avoid rejection? Become whatever the other person wants. Shapeshift. Mirror. Disappear. That's what was happening to me. Every time Mark gave me a tiny signal of disapproval, my caveman brain screamed, change or die.
And I changed.
But here's the catch. No matter how much I changed, it was never enough. Because the problem wasn't me. The problem was that I was trying to be loved for being someone I wasn't. And deep down, you can always tell when someone loves a mask instead of your real face. You feel the wrongness, the loneliness, the slow suffocation of pretending. Mark didn't do this to me. Let me be very clear. He wasn't a villain. He was just a regular guy with preferences and moods. He never asked me to disappear. I did that all by myself, with my own two hands, using the tools my childhood and my culture and my fear had given me. That's the trap. The trap is inside your own head. And the key to escaping is realizing that you built it, which means you can tear it down. One night, about 6 months into that relationship, I had a fight. Not with Mark. With myself. I was lying in bed next to him, staring at the ceiling, and I thought, if I stay here one more year, I won't remember who I used to be. I had stopped writing in my journal, stopped calling my mom as often, stopped cooking the foods I grew up eating because the smell bothered him. I was a ghost wearing my own skin. The next morning, I did something tiny but revolutionary. I made pho for breakfast. The real kind. With star anise and cinnamon and fish sauce that smells like vacation. The whole apartment smelled like Hanoi. Mark woke up, wrinkled his nose, and said, "What is that smell?" And I said, "Breakfast." He made a face. I didn't apologize. I just ate my pho.
Slowly.
Deliberately. Like I was reclaiming a piece of land that had been stolen. He got over it. We ate breakfast separately that day. And the world didn't end. That was my first lesson in balance. You can do something for yourself, something purely, selfishly for you, and the person you love won't leave. They might wrinkle their nose. They might not understand, but they won't disappear. Unless they were never really there for you in the first place. I wish I could tell you, I left Mark the next week. I didn't. I stayed for another 8 months, practicing tiny acts of self-respect. Saying no to plans I didn't want. Playing my Vietnamese music on low volume while he was in the shower. Speaking my imperfect English without apologizing first. Some days he didn't notice. Some days he pushed back. "Why are you being difficult?" He asked once, when I refused to change my dinner order to something he liked better. "I'm not being difficult," I said. "I just want the tofu." That sentence, "I just want the tofu," felt like the most rebellious thing I had ever said. Because it was true. And because I wasn't sorry. Eventually, we broke up. Not because of tofu. Because we wanted different lives. He wanted a partner who would fold into his world like a piece of origami. I wanted to be a person, not a paper swan. Here's what I want you to take from this section. If you are watching this video and you feel that tightness in your chest, that feeling of, I'm losing myself in this relationship, in this language, in this life, listen to it. That tightness is not weakness. That tightness is your real self trying to breathe. You have not disappeared forever. You're just buried under a pile of shoulds and what ifs and but they'll leave me. And you can dig yourself out. Not in one dramatic gesture. One bowl of pho at a time. One I want the tofu at a time. One imperfect English sentence at a time. Because the only way to be truly loved in any language, in any country, is to exist. Fully, messily, unapologetically. And that's exactly what America started to teach me next. What independence actually means. Let me clear something up right now. When Americans say the word independence, they're not talking about what you think they're talking about. If you grew up anywhere outside the West, you probably imagine independence as something cold, lonely. A woman living alone in a studio apartment, eating cereal for dinner, feeding 17 cats. That's not independence. That's isolation. And Americans are not nearly as isolated as your TV shows make them seem. No, independence in America is something much stranger and much more useful. It is the ability to stand alone so you can stand with someone without falling over. Think of a bicycle. A bicycle cannot balance when it's standing still. It needs movement. It needs to lean slightly left, then slightly right, constantly adjusting. That wobbling? That's not failure. That's independence in action. The moment the bicycle stops wobbling and locks into perfect stillness, it falls. The second year, I swung the other way. I decided independence meant never needing anyone. I stopped asking for help. I stopped sharing my feelings. I became this iron-walled fortress of a woman. No cats, but plenty of cold cereal. And you know what happened? I didn't fall. But I didn't move either. I just stood there, frozen, lonely, and secretly miserable. Neither of those is independence. The first is codependence. The second is isolation. And American culture taught me there is a third option. Here's the real definition I wish someone had given me on day one. Independence is the quiet confidence that you will be okay even if they say no. Not you will be okay alone forever. Not you don't need anyone. Just you will survive a no. You will survive a disagreement. You will survive a moment of not being chosen. And because you know that, you can actually show up as your full self in a relationship. You're not constantly negotiating from a place of fear. Let me give you a tiny example from last week. My husband wanted to go to a barbecue at his coworker's house. I was exhausted. The kids had been feral all day. The idea of putting on real pants and making small talk about lawn care made me want to crawl under the bed and never come out. The old me would have gone, smiled, nodded, been secretly resentful, then complained about it for 3 days. The new me said, I love you. You go. I'm staying home. He said, Are you sure? I said, Yes. I need to not be around people for 4 hours. You need to go be social. This is fine. He went. I stayed. I ate leftover noodles in my pajamas and watched 3 episodes of a terrible reality show. The kids were asleep. The house was quiet. And when he came back, smelling like barbecue and other people's conversations, we were both happy to see each other.
No resentment. No escorequeping.
Just 2 separate people who chose to come back together. That's independence. Do you see how mundane it is? It's not heroic. It's not a movie montage where I burn my bra and move to a mountaintop. It's just saying no thank you to a barbecue and meaning it without guilt. But here's why this matters for your English learning. Because the same fear that makes you say yes to things you don't want is the fear that makes you freeze when you speak. You're afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of being judged, afraid of the tiny pause while a native speaker processes your accent. So your brain offers you a survival strategy. Stay quiet.
Agree. Nod.
Don't risk it. That strategy worked in the caveman era. In 2026 America, it just makes you invisible. Independence in English means accepting that you will sound imperfect. You will use the wrong preposition. You will say, I go to store yesterday instead of I went to the store yesterday. And the world will not end. The person you're talking to will still understand. And if they don't, you'll survive that too. I tested this theory in a very American way. At a drive-thru. One afternoon, I wanted a coffee. But I wanted it with oat milk and 1 pump of vanilla and extra hot but not too hot. A complicated order. The old me would have just said regular coffee to avoid the embarrassment of messing up. But that day, I decided to practice independence. I pulled up to the speaker and said, as clearly as I could, can I have a medium latte with oat milk, 1 vanilla? Extra hot, please? Did I say extra hot with a slight Vietnamese melody? Absolutely. Did anyone care? Not even a little bit. Here's what I learned. Americans, for all their cultural quirks, are incredibly forgiving of imperfect English. Because America runs on imperfect English. Half of Los Angeles speaks English as a second language. Same with New York, Houston, Chicago. The person taking your coffee order probably speaks 2 or 3 languages themselves. They don't expect you to sound like a news anchor. They expect you to be understandable. That's it. The only person expecting perfection is you. So independence in this context is giving yourself permission to be a beginner, to sound like a child sometimes, to ask someone to repeat themselves, to say, sorry, can you say that slower, without feeling like you failed a test. I practice this every single day. Yesterday, I was on the phone with my internet provider. The representative had an accent I couldn't place, and he spoke fast. Very fast. I missed half of what he said. The old me would have nodded and hoped for the best. The new me said, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you say it again, more slowly?
He did.
I understood. We fixed the internet. No one died. That tiny act, asking for a repeat, admitting I didn't understand, is independence. Because it requires you to tolerate the discomfort of not knowing. To sit in that wobble for a second without falling over. And here's the beautiful part. Every time you do it, it gets easier. Your brain learns that rejection doesn't come. The tiger doesn't appear. The person on the other end just says, no problem, and repeats themselves. And slowly, the fear shrinks. I want you to try something today. Go somewhere, a coffee shop, a grocery store, anywhere, and make one small request in English. Ask for something slightly specific. Don't just point. Use your words. And when you do, notice your heart rate. Notice the urge to apologize for existing. Then notice that you survive. That's your first wobble. That's independence. You don't need to move to America to learn this. You just need to decide that your voice, in all its imperfect glory, deserves to be heard. Because the opposite of independence isn't dependence. The opposite is silence. And you've been quiet long enough. A love that suffocates. Let me tell you about the night I almost lost myself completely. I was sitting on the bathroom floor. Not because I was sick. Not because the toilet was broken. Because I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like someone had placed a stack of phone books on it. Remember phone books? And was slowly adding more. Every breath was shallow. Every thought was a spiral. Mark was in the other room watching football. He didn't know I was on the floor. He wouldn't have understood even if he knew. Because on paper, nothing was wrong. He hadn't yelled at me. He hadn't hit me. He hadn't done anything that would make a reasonable person call a hotline. He was just being himself. And I was just disappearing. That's the thing about suffocating love. It doesn't look like abuse. It looks like affection. It looks like him texting you every hour to ask where you are. Just checking on you, babe. It looks like him getting quiet when you mention an ex, so you learn to never mention anyone from your past. It looks like him saying, I just love you so much after he criticizes your outfit, your friends, your accent. The love is the cage. And the cage is lined with velvet, so you don't even feel the bars until you try to move. Here's what nobody tells you about relationships like this. The other person isn't a monster. Mark wasn't a monster. He was a lonely man who needed someone to need him completely. And I was a lonely woman who needed to be needed. We fit together like two broken puzzle pieces. The picture wasn't pretty, but neither of us had to be alone. That's the trap. Loneliness convinces you that any connection is better than none. Your brain releases dopamine when you get a text from them, even a controlling one. It releases oxytocin when they hold you, even after they've made you cry. Your nervous system gets addicted to the cycle. Tension, explosion, reconciliation, relief. Tension, explosion, reconciliation, relief. Around and around until you don't remember what calm feels like. The science on this is brutal. Intermittent reinforcement, sometimes getting love, sometimes getting criticism, never knowing which, is more addictive than consistent reward. Slot machines work the same way. You keep pulling the lever because maybe this time you'll win. Maybe this time he'll be the sweet man from the first month. Maybe this time I'll say the right thing and he'll stop being cold. I pulled that lever for 18 months. And here's what I lost. My appetite. I stopped eating regularly. Not on purpose. Food just didn't taste like anything anymore. My sleep. I would lie awake replaying every conversation, trying to figure out what I did wrong. My friends. One by one, they stopped calling. I had become so exhausting to be around. Always anxious. Always talking about Mark. Always canceling plans because he needed me. That they gave up. My Vietnamese. I was so focused on sounding American that I stopped calling my mom in our language. My accent in English got better. My fluency in my mother tongue got worse. I was losing my voice in every language. Do you see the pattern? I was shrinking. Not dramatically. Not in a way that would make anyone stage an intervention. Just a little less each day. A little quieter. A little smaller. A little more willing to accept less than I deserved. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. A totally unremarkable Tuesday. I had put onion. A tiny amount. For flavor. He pushed the plate away. Not dramatically. Just a gentle slide. Like removing a piece of paper he was done reading. And I apologized. I actually apologized for cooking him dinner with a single vegetable he didn't prefer. That night on the bathroom floor, I had a thought so clear it felt like someone else's voice. If your best friend told you this story, what would you tell her? I would tell her to leave. Not dramatically. Not with a speech and a suitcase in the rain. Just to pack her toothbrush and go somewhere safe. To remember who she was before she started apologizing for onions. But I couldn't hear that voice for myself. Because when you're inside the suffocation, you can't see the bars. You just feel like you can't breathe and assume something is wrong with your lungs. Here's where America helped me. Not through therapy, though that came later. Not through a support group, though those exist. But through something much simpler. Through watching other couples. I started paying attention. At the grocery store. At the park. At the coffee shop where I would sit alone for hours just to be out of the apartment. And I noticed something strange. Healthy couples argued. Not the silent treatment argument I knew. Real arguments. Where one person said, I disagree, and the other person said, okay, explain, and they both kept eating their sandwiches. I saw a woman at Target tell her husband, "You're being annoying."
And he laughed.
He actually laughed and said, "I know, but I'm not wrong." And she rolled her eyes and kissed his cheek. They didn't explode. They didn't withdraw. They just disagreed and kept existing next to each other. That was a revelation. You can disagree and not lose the love. You can say, "I don't like that," and the other person doesn't crumble. You can be two separate people with two separate opinions and still share a bed that night. My relationship with Mark had no space for separation, because our love wasn't built on two whole people choosing each other. It was built on two half people clinging to each other so neither would fall. That's not love. That's mutual drowning. I finally left on a Sunday, not with drama. I just packed a bag, clothes, my passport, my mom's photo, and walked to a hotel. I called my best friend from college, the one I hadn't spoken to in months. She answered on the second ring. "It's me," I said. "I need help." And she said, "Where are you?" "I'm coming." That's the other thing I learned. The people who really love you don't leave just because you've been distant. They're waiting, quietly,
with the light on.
And I put it on my windowsill and decided I would keep it alive. Not because I needed a plant, because I needed proof that I could take care of something without losing myself. The succulent didn't judge my accent. It didn't care if I used the wrong preposition. It just needed water and sun, and I could give that without disappearing. That plant is still alive, by the way. 5 years later, it has spawned 3 other succulents. They're all ridiculous and beautiful, and none of them have ever criticized my cooking. Here's what I want you to hear. If you are in a relationship, romantic, friendship, even a family relationship, that makes you feel smaller instead of bigger, listen to that feeling. It's not your imagination. It's not you being too sensitive. It's your soul trying to tell you something before you forget how to breathe. And if you are in that place right now with your English learning, the same principle applies. If the way you're studying makes you feel stupid, ashamed, like you'll never be good enough, stop. Change the method. Find a way to learn that makes you feel curious instead of crushed. Because the goal isn't to become a different person. The goal is to become more of who you already are. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be seen. And the only person who can really see you is you. After I left Mark, I thought I would never love again. I thought I was broken. Too foreign. Too much. Not enough. But America had one more lesson for me. The best love doesn't find you when you're whole. It finds you when you're brave enough to walk away from what's breaking you. And that's exactly what happened next. The American lesson no one told me. After I left Mark, I did something that scared me more than any breakup. I stayed single. On purpose. For an entire year.
No dating apps.
No just coffee that turned into something. No late night text to exes. Just me, my tiny studio apartment, my succulent plant, and a lot of uncomfortable silence. Do you know how loud silence is when you've spent years filling it with someone else's opinions? It's deafening. The first week, I couldn't sleep. Not because I missed Mark. Because without his voice telling me what to think, I had no idea what my own thoughts sounded like. I would sit on my couch at 8 p.m. with nowhere to go and no one to text, and I would feel this crawling panic. What do I do now? Who am I when no one is watching? That's the American lesson no one told me about. Americans, for all their reputation as loud and shallow and obsessed with success, have one secret superpower. They know how to be alone without being lonely. They know how to sit in a coffee shop by themselves, reading a book, not apologizing for taking up space. They know how to say, "I'm taking a mental health day," without explaining further. They know how to exist as a single unit before they become half of a pair. I had never learned that. In my culture, being alone was a failure. It meant no one wanted you. It meant you were broken, pitiful, incomplete. Your value as a woman was measured by your relationships, to your parents, your husband, your children. A woman alone was a woman who had failed. But here in America, I watched women alone all the time. At the gym at 6 a.m., running on treadmills with no ring on their finger. At the bookstore, browsing for an hour, buying nothing, perfectly content. On hiking trails, alone with their headphones and the trees, not waiting for anyone to catch up. At first, I felt sorry for them.
Poor things, I thought.
No one to go with. Then I realized they felt sorry for me. Poor thing, they probably thought. Can't even go to the bathroom without a companion. That realization hit me like a cold wave. I had never chosen to be alone. I had only ever been alone because someone left. And then I scrambled to fill the empty space before I had to feel it. Boyfriend, friends, family, anyone. I would rather be in a bad relationship than in no relationship. I would rather say we than I. The American lesson was this. You cannot truly love someone until you can tolerate being without them. Not because you don't love them. Because you love yourself enough to know that your existence doesn't depend on their presence. I started small. I took myself out to dinner. A real restaurant, not fast food. I sat at a table for one, ordered a meal I actually wanted, spicy because no one was there to complain, and ate it slowly. No phone. No book. Just me and my food and the other diners who definitely weren't staring at the weird woman eating alone. My heart pounded for the first 10 minutes. Then, somewhere around the third bite of my curry, I relaxed. No one cared. The waitress didn't ask if I was waiting for someone. The couple at the next table didn't whisper about me. The world kept spinning, and I was just a person eating dinner. I did that once a week, for 3 months. Every Friday night. Table for one. Spicy food. And I started to notice something. I looked forward to it. Not because I was lonely, because I was finally spending time with someone I had been neglecting for years. Myself. Here's where the English lesson hides inside the life lesson. When you're afraid to speak English, what are you really afraid of? Judgment? Rejection? Looking foolish? Those are the same fears that kept me in a suffocating relationship. The fear of being alone with your own imperfect self. The fear that if people see the real you with your accent, your grammar mistakes, your strange idioms, they won't stick around.
So you hide.
You nod and smile. You say, I'm fine when you mean I'm lost. You let the native speaker do all the talking because at least that way you won't make a mistake. But here's what I learned from my solo dinners. Making a mistake in public doesn't kill you. Ordering the wrong thing, pronouncing it wrong. Having the waitress look confused for a second while she figures out what you mean, that's not rejection. That's just two humans communicating across a tiny gap. The gap closes. You get your food. Life continues. One Friday, I ordered pad thai and accidentally said pad thai. The waitress said, Pad thai? You mean pad thai? With a small smile.
Not mean.
Not mocking. Just clarifying. I laughed and said, Yes, pad thai. Sorry, my mouth is confused today. She laughed too. We moved on. That's it. That's the whole horror story. A tiny correction, a shared laugh, and then everyone forgets. The old me would have died inside. Would have replayed that pad thai moment for a week. Would have sworn never to order Thai food again. But the new me, the one who had eaten alone for 3 months and survived, just shrugged. My mouth was confused. So what? So is everyone sometimes. Americans have a phrase for this. They say, no worries. 2 little words that changed my life.
No worries.
Not. That was a terrible mistake. Not you should be ashamed. Just no worries. It didn't matter. The message got through. I started applying no worries to everything. I said, yesterday I go to park, instead of went to the park.
No way.
I pronounced beach a little too close to a bad word. No worries, the context made it clear. I asked someone to repeat themselves 3 times.
No worries.
The only person handing out worries was me, and I decided to fire that person. Halfway through my year of being single, I did something radical. I stopped apologizing for my English. Cold turkey. No more sorry for my bad English before every sentence. No more, I'm still learning, as a disclaimer. I just spoke. Whatever came out. Imperfect, accented, sometimes weird. And do you know what happened? Nothing bad. Literally nothing. People understood me better when I stopped apologizing. Because apologizing made me nervous, and nervous made me stumble, and stumbling made me actually harder to understand. When I just said the sentence, however crooked, my confidence carried the meaning. Americans are good at guessing. They want to understand you. They're not looking for reasons to reject you. I learned this from watching my American friends. They make mistakes in English all the time. Native speakers. They say, I could care less when they mean, I couldn't care less. They say literally when they mean figuratively. They mix up affect and effect. And no one cares. Because language isn't a purity test. It's a bridge. As long as the bridge holds, the grammar can be a little wobbly. By the end of that year, I had changed. Not my accent. Not my vocabulary. My relationship with myself. I had learned that I could be alone and not lonely. That I could make mistakes and not crumble. That I could disagree with someone and not lose them. That I could exist fully, messily, without apology. And that's when I met my husband. Not because I was looking, because I had stopped looking. I was so busy enjoying my solo dinners and my terrible reality shows and my slightly too many houseplants that I didn't have time to hunt for love. And somehow, that's when it found me. He was at the bookstore. The same one I went to every Saturday. He saw me reading a cookbook, Vietnamese recipes, and asked, is that any good? 3 years earlier, I would have panicked. A handsome American man talking to me? I would have said something awkward and fled. But this time, I just looked up and said, it's okay. But the pictures are beautiful. He laughed, asked if I cooked. I said yes. He said he couldn't boil water. I said, that's sad. He said, can you teach me? And that was it.
No fireworks.
No sweeping music. Just 2 people, 2 languages, 2 cultures, standing in a bookstore being honest. The American lesson had worked. I didn't need him. I was fine alone. And because I was fine alone, I could actually choose him. Not from desperation. From freedom. That's the balance. And that's exactly where our story goes next. Balancing love and independence. So there I was. 1 year of intentional solitude under my belt. 17 houseplants. A refrigerator full of spicy food that no one complained about. And then this man appeared in a bookstore, asking about a Vietnamese cookbook. His name is David. And from the very beginning, he did something that terrified me. He didn't need me. Let me explain why that was terrifying. My entire romantic history had been built on mutual need. I need you to need me. You need me to need you. Let's wrap our neediness around each other like a human blanket and pretend that's love. David didn't play that game. He wanted me, but he didn't need me. And I didn't know what to do with that. On our 3rd date, I got sick. Not dramatically sick. Just a cold. Stuffy nose, scratchy throat. The kind of sick where you want someone to bring you soup and tell you you're pretty even though your face is red and your hair is a disaster. The old me would have expected, No, demanded that my boyfriend drop everything and nurse me back to health. Not because I was entitled, because I thought that's what love was. Suffering together. Proving your devotion through sacrifice. But when I texted David, "I'm sick, canceling tonight," he said, "Feel better. Let me know when you're up for rescheduling." That's it. No, I'm coming over with medicine. No, I'll skip my meeting. Just feel better. I stared at that text for 20 minutes. Was he being cold? Was he losing interest? Did he not care? My anxious attachment brain ran through every worst-case scenario. He doesn't love me. He's pulling away. I'm not important enough. Then I took a breath. A real one. And I asked myself, what would the independent version of me do? The independent version of me would take care of herself, make her own soup, take her own medicine, sleep for 12 hours. And then, when she was healthy again, go have a lovely date with a man who respected her enough to let her be sick without performing heroics. So that's what I did. I made faux. I watched terrible TV. I slept. And 2 days later, I texted David, "I'm alive. Dinner on Friday?" He said yes. And we never talked about the cold again. That was my first lesson in balancing love and independence. You can be sick without your partner becoming your nurse. You can struggle without them becoming your savior. You can be two separate people who choose to be together, not two broken people who can't function apart. The science of this is actually beautiful. There's a concept in psychology called differentiation. It's the ability to hold onto your own identity, thoughts, and feelings while staying emotionally connected to someone else. People with high differentiation can disagree without destroying the relationship. They can say, "I love you and I need space," in the same week without either statement being a lie. They can be close without merging. People with low differentiation, that was me, treat every disagreement as a threat, every moment of distance as abandonment, every independent thought as betrayal. Because deep down, we don't trust that love can survive separateness. David, without knowing it, was my differentiation teacher. He didn't get jealous when I went out with friends. Like a tree. I could lean on him, but I could also stand on my own. The tree didn't mind either way. At first, I found it unsettling. Where's the drama? Where's the passion? If you're not fighting to keep me, do you even want me? That's a toxic question, by the way. Fighting to keep me is not love. It's anxiety dressed up as romance. Real love doesn't require fighting. Real love requires showing up.
Consistently.
Boringly. Reliably. David showed up. He showed up to every date on time. He remembered my favorite coffee order. He introduced me to his friends without apologizing for my accent. He asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. And when I said, "I need to spend Saturday alone, just reading," he said, "Okay, enjoy your book," and meant it. Do you understand how revolutionary that was? A man who didn't take my need for solitude as a personal rejection. A man who had his own life, his own friends, hobbies, goals, and wanted me to have mine too. I started testing this balance in small ways. On purpose. Not to manipulate him, to teach myself that safety was real. Test 1. I ordered for myself at a restaurant. Not "we'll share," or whatever he's having. I looked the waiter in the eye and said, "I'll have the spicy basil tofu, please." David smiled. He didn't need to order for me. He didn't feel emasculated. He just enjoyed his own meal and stole one of my spring rolls, which I allowed because sharing is nice when it's chosen, not demanded. Test 2. I disagreed with him. Out loud. About something meaningless, which movie to watch. I said, "That one looks boring. Let's watch the other one." He said, "Really? I heard the other one is terrible." I said, "Then let's find a third option." And we did. No fight. No silent treatment. No one keeping score. Just two adults negotiating a minor preference. Test 3. I went on a weekend trip with a friend. Without him. 3 days. Minimal texting. When I came back, he was happy to see me but not desperate. He had missed me, but he had also enjoyed his own weekend of video games and takeout. We had both survived separation. More than survived. We had thrived. Each test was a small victory. Each one taught my nervous system, you can be close and still be free. You can love deeply and still be your own person. The two are not opposites. They are partners. Here's where the English lesson lives inside this love story. Learning a language is the same balancing act. You have to get close to the language. Immerse yourself. Make mistakes. Feel stupid. Try anyway, but you also have to stay separate enough that you don't lose your identity. You don't have to become an American to speak English. You don't have to erase your accent, your culture, your way of thinking. You just have to build a bridge between who you are and who you're talking to. The old me wanted to become someone else. Speak perfectly. Sound native. Disappear into the language like a chameleon. That's not balance. That's self-abandonment. The new me speaks English with a Vietnamese rhythm. I still mix up my prepositions. I still say open the light instead of turn on the light. My husband thinks it's charming. My kids think it's normal. And the language works.
People understand me.
I understand them. The bridge holds. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You don't need to be perfect to be understood. You just need to show up.
Consistently.
Boringly. Reliably. Like a tree. David and I dated for 2 years before we got married. 2 whole years of practicing balance. Of saying, I love you and I need space in the same conversation. Of disagreeing about movies and merging our finances and figuring out what it means to be a team without losing ourselves. On our wedding day, we wrote our own vows. His made me cry. Mine made him laugh. But the part one remember most is this. I promised to be his partner, not his project. He promised to be my home, not my prison. And then we ate spicy tofu at the reception. Because balance. That was 7 years ago. We have 2 kids now, a mortgage, a minivan, and a collection of mismatched Tupperware that neither of us will organize. Our life is not a fairy tale. It's better. It's real. And the balance we built in those early years, we're still building it. Every day. Every disagreement. Every moment of choosing each other without losing ourselves. That's the secret. Balance isn't something you achieve once and keep forever. It's something you practice. Like a language. Like a muscle. Like a love. And the practice never ends. My husband, a mirror, not a crutch. Let me tell you the most confusing thing about marrying an American man. He refuses to save me. Not because he's lazy. Not because he doesn't care. Because he genuinely believes that I don't need saving. And that belief, more than any romantic gesture, has made me stronger than I ever thought possible. In my old relationships, I was the damsel. Not on purpose. But I had learned that showing weakness made people stay. If I cried, they comforted. If I said I couldn't do something, they stepped in. If I made myself small, they felt big. And feeling big made them feel loving. So I kept shrinking because shrinking worked. Then came David. The first time I cried over something small, a work deadline, a late bill, the usual adult panic, he didn't rush to fix it. He sat next to me, put his hand on my back and said, "That sounds really hard. What do you want to do about it?"
What do I want to do about it?
No one had ever asked me that. The question assumed I had an answer, that I was capable, that I wasn't a helpless child waiting for a hero. I hated it, and I loved it. Here's what I learned. A crutch is something you lean on because you can't walk. A mirror is something you look into so you can see yourself clearly. David refused to be my crutch. He insisted on being my mirror. And the reflection he showed me was someone far more capable than I had ever believed. The cultural difference here is real. In many cultures, including my Vietnamese upbringing, love is demonstrated through action. You cook for someone. You clean for someone. You solve their problems. You anticipate their needs before they even express them. That's how you prove you care. American love, at least the healthy version, works differently. It says, I believe you can handle your own life. I will support you, but I won't replace you. I will stand beside you, but I won't carry you. Because carrying someone eventually makes them forget how to walk. The first year of our marriage, I tested this constantly, subconsciously. I would complain about a problem, expecting him to jump into solution mode. He would listen, nod, and ask, what have you tried so far? Infuriating. Beautiful. Infuriatingly beautiful. One Saturday, our sink got clogged. Both sinks, actually. Water backing up, the whole disgusting situation. The old me would have called David at work, crying, demanding he come home immediately to fix it. That's what men are for, right? Fixing things? But David wasn't home. He was at a conference 3 hours away. And something in me, the independent woman I had been practicing to become, decided to try.
Just try.
I watched 3 YouTube videos. I went to the hardware store and asked a teenage employee where to find a plunger. I said plunger with my accent, and he said aisle 7, and I found it. I came home. I plunged. I plunged again. Water moved. Not completely fixed, but better. I texted David. Sink is 70% unclogged. Calling a plumber for the rest. He texted back. Proud of you. Send me the plumber bill. That was it. No metal.
No parade.
Just quiet pride and shared responsibility. That's the mirror. He didn't fix my sink. He reflected back a version of me who could figure it out. The same dynamic plays out in our parenting. When our first child was born, I assumed I would be the default parent. That's how I was raised. Mom does everything. Dad helps occasionally if he's in a good mood. But David didn't accept that script. From day one, he changed diapers, got up for night feedings, took paternity leave. He didn't ask me how to do things. He learned himself. By being bad at first, then less bad, then actually good. I remember watching him give our daughter a bath when she was 3 months old. He was clumsy. He got water in her eyes.
She cried.
He almost cried. But he didn't hand her to me. He said, I've got this. You go rest. That's not a crutch. A crutch would be me doing everything, because it's easier than watching him struggle. That mirror said, you are also a parent. You can learn. You will learn.
And he did.
Here's the English lesson hiding inside this. When you learn a language, you need a mirror, not a crutch. A crutch is someone who translates for you constantly, who finishes your sentences, who speaks for you because it's faster, who makes you feel like you'll never be good enough to do it yourself. A mirror is someone who listens patiently, who lets you struggle for the right word, who doesn't jump in unless you ask, who reflects back the reality that you are capable of being understood, even if it takes an extra 5 seconds. My husband is not an English teacher. He's never corrected my grammar unless I asked. When I say, yesterday I go to store, he doesn't say went. He says, oh, which store did you go to? He models the correct tense without shaming me. He assumes I know the difference, but my mouth just took the shortcut. Because that's what mirrors do. They show you what's already there. They don't try to replace you. I've watched other couples where the American partner constantly corrects the non-native partner. Every sentence. Every mistake. And you know what happens? The non-native partner stops talking. Because speaking becomes a test, not a conversation. The crutch becomes a cage. David never did that. Even when I said something truly ridiculous. One time I meant to say, I'm going to pick up the kids from school, and instead said, I'm going to kidnap the kids from school. He laughed so hard he choked. Then he said, please don't use that word at the pickup line. And we both laughed. He didn't scold. He didn't make me feel stupid. He just reflected back the humor of the moment and trusted me to learn. That trust, that basic belief that I am intelligent, capable, and worth listening to has done more for my English than any textbook. Because the fear of being wrong is the only thing that ever held me back. And David's mirror slowly, gently, erased that fear. Not all at once. It's still not completely gone. Yesterday I said, I need to wash the clothes instead of do the laundry, and a tiny voice whispered, idiot. But then I remembered David's face when I said kidnap. The way he laughed with me, not at me. And the voice got quieter. That's the power of a mirror relationship. In love, in language, in life. Someone who sees you clearly and doesn't flinch. Who doesn't need you to be different. Who reflects back your best self until you start to believe it's really you. I'm not saying David is perfect. He leaves his socks everywhere. He falls asleep during movies. He once put a frozen pizza in the oven with the cardboard still under it. But when it comes to the big stuff, respect, patience, the willingness to stand beside without standing in front, he's exactly the mirror I needed. And here's the twist. Being his mirror has made me better too. When he struggles, with work stress, with parenting doubts, with his own fears, I don't rescue him. I sit next to him and say, that sounds really hard.
What do you want to do about it?
I reflect back his capability. I trust him to find his own answers. That's balance. Two mirrors facing each other, reflecting strength back and forth until neither one feels alone.
No crutches. No rescuing.
Just two whole people choosing to walk side by side. If you're learning English or learning to love or learning anything hard, find yourself a mirror. Not someone who fixes you. Someone who shows you that you're not broken. And if you can't find one yet, be your own mirror. Look at yourself in the bathroom mirror every morning and say, I am capable. I am learning. I am enough. Because you are. Even with the accent. Even with the mistakes. Even with a sink that's only 70% unclogged. Especially then. Raising kids between two worlds. My daughter asked me a question last week that stopped my heart. She's 6. Her name is Lily, and she has the particular cruelty of 6-year-olds. Honesty without a filter. She looked up from her breakfast, waffles cut into tiny squares, because she will not eat a whole waffle, only the squares, and said, Mommy, why do you sometimes say words wrong? I put down my coffee. What do you mean? You said yesternight instead of last night. To explain about first languages and second languages, and the beautiful mess of bilingual brains. To say something smart about how English is illogical and sheep should have an S, just like everything else. But instead, I took a breath. Because this is the real test of balance. Not between me and David. Between me and myself. Reflected in the tiny humans who watch my every move. I said, you're right. Mommy is still learning English. I learned a different language when I was a little girl, and sometimes my brain gets confused. Do you think that's okay? She chewed a waffle square, swallowed, thought about it with the solemnity of a Supreme Court justice. Then she shrugged and said, yeah, you're still my mommy. Then she asked for more orange juice. That moment, that tiny throwaway exchange, is the whole story of raising kids between two worlds. They notice everything. Your accent, your mistakes, The way you say yesternight, like a character from a Jane Austen novel who time traveled to 2026. And you have two choices. You can hide in shame, pretending to be someone you're not. Or you can stand in your truth and let them love the real you.
I chose trousse.
And it's been the hardest, most rewarding thing I've ever done. Here's what nobody tells you about bilingual parenting. The children will not speak your language. Not the way you want them to. Lily understands Vietnamese perfectly. She can follow every conversation I have with my mom on the phone. But when she answers,
English.
always English. Because English is the language of her friends, her school, her TV shows, her entire world. At first, this broke my heart. I imagined us speaking Vietnamese together, passing down the soft tones of my childhood, cooking pho while singing folk songs. Instead, she tells me about her day in American accented English while I stir the pot and respond in my Vietnamese accented English. Neither of us speaks perfectly. Both of us understand. That's balance. Not the fantasy of pure cultural transmission. The reality of two people building a bridge. My son, Leo, is 3. He doesn't care about languages at all. He cares about trucks.
And snacks.
And whether he can convince someone to carry him, even though his legs work perfectly fine. He speaks a hybrid language that I call toddler essay with Vietnamese seasoning. He says me for mom, BA for dad, and thank you for everything else. He once thanked the toaster for making his waffle. The toaster did not respond. He was fine with that. The secret I've learned from raising them is this. Children don't love you for your fluency. They don't love you for your grammar. They don't love you for your accent or your vocabulary or your ability to order coffee without saying pad thai. They love you because you show up, because you cut the waffles into squares, because you kiss their foreheads when they're sick, because you say yesternight and mean last night and that's still enough. This is a radical lesson for someone like me who spent decades believing that love had to be earned through perfection. My daughter doesn't care that I mix up prepositions. She cares that I come to her school plays and clap too loud. My son doesn't notice when I say I go instead of I went. He notices when I get on the floor and play trucks with him, making terrible engine sounds with my imperfect mouth. The voice inside my head that whispers, "You're not good enough." It gets quieter every time one of my kids laughs at my mistakes. Not mean laughter. Just the pure, unfiltered joy of a child who thinks her mommy is funny because she said tooths instead of teeth. I used to correct myself in front of them. No, mommy means teeth.
Teeth.
But then I noticed something. Lily started correcting herself too. Not because she was making mistakes.
Because she was imitating me.
She learned that speaking was a performance to be judged, not a connection to be shared. So I stopped. Now when I say tooths, I just keep talking. And Lily doesn't notice. Or if she notices, she doesn't care. Because the story is more interesting than the grammar. That's the lesson I want to give my children. Not perfect English. Not the ability to hide their roots and sound like they were born in Ohio. I want to give them the courage to be themselves, to speak their truth, even if it comes out crooked, to love without losing themselves, to know that good enough is not a failure. It's the definition of being human. This applies to everything, not just language, not just parenting. Love itself. David and I have been married for 7 years. We have 2 kids, a mortgage, a minivan, and a collection of mismatched Tupperware that neither of us will organize. Our life is not a fairy tale. It's better. It's real. And every day I practice balance. When the kids are screaming and the laundry is piled to the ceiling and I haven't spoken to an adult who isn't requesting a different color cup in 3 hours, I take a breath. I go to my room. I close the door. I sit in silence for 5 minutes. Not because I'm abandoning my family. Because I'm saving myself so I can come back. David does the same. When he's overwhelmed, he goes for a walk. Alone. No kids. No wife. Just him and his thoughts and the suburban sidewalks. And I don't get offended. I don't think he doesn't love us. I think he's balancing. And I'm grateful. Our kids are learning this. Just by watching. Lily saw me close my bedroom door the other day and told her brother, "Mommy needs a quiet minute. Let's play in the other room." She's 6. Not a perfect house where no one ever argues or says yesternight. The legacy is a child who knows that love includes space. That connection requires separateness. That you can be two different people, speaking two different languages, making two different kinds of mistakes, and still belong to each other. Last week, Lily came home from school with a drawing. She had drawn our family. 4 stick figures under a yellow sun. Above the sun, she had written, "My family speaks 2 languages and 1 love." She spelled languages wrong. She missed 3 letters. And absolutely, completely enough. I kept the drawing. It's on my refrigerator, right next to the mismatched Tupperware. The messy middle, crying in the closet. Let me tell you about the night I hid in my own closet. Not because someone was chasing me. Not because we were playing hide and seek. Because I needed to cry without anyone hearing me. My kids were asleep. David was watching something on his laptop. And I was sitting on the floor of my bedroom closet, surrounded by shoes I never wear, sobbing into a winter coat so the sounds wouldn't travel. This was last year, not 5 years ago, not when I was young and broken and fresh off the plane. Last year, after the balanced marriage, after the happy kids, after all the progress and all the lessons, I still ended up on the closet floor. Why? Because life is messy, and balance is not a permanent state. It's something you lose and find and lose again, sometimes in the same afternoon. The trigger was stupid. Embarrassingly stupid. I had spent the whole day doing everything. Work deadlines. Pediatrician appointments. Grocery shopping. A phone call with my mom that turned into a 2-hour lecture about how I'm not feeding the children correctly. Then David came home and asked innocently, "What's for dinner?" And something inside me snapped. Not at him. At the universe. At the invisible pile of responsibility that only ever lands on my shoulders. At the fact that I had been running for 14 hours straight, and the question, "What's for dinner?" assumed I had an answer when all I had was exhaustion. I said, "I don't know. Figure it out yourself." Then I walked to the bedroom, opened the closet, sat down, and cried. David found me 20 minutes later. Not because he heard me, the winter coat did its job, but because he noticed I was gone. He opened the closet door, saw me on the floor, and didn't say, "What's wrong?" or "Are you okay?" or "Why are you in the closet?" He just sat down next to me on the closet floor among the shoes. And he waited. After a minute, I said, "I can't do everything." He said, "I know." I said, "I don't want to figure out dinner." He said, "Then don't. I'll order pizza." I said, "The kids had pizza yesterday." He said, "Then they'll have pizza 2 days in a row. They'll survive." And then I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so absurdly simple. The entire meltdown, the closet, the tears, the coat, was over pizza. A problem that could be solved in 30 seconds by a man with a phone and a credit card. But it wasn't about pizza. It was about the belief that I had to do everything perfectly. Every meal homemade. Every appointment remembered. Every expectation met. And when I inevitably failed at that impossible standard, I collapsed. That's the messy middle. The part of the story that doesn't make it into Instagram Reels. The part where you've done the work, learned the lessons, found the balance, and then life throws a Tuesday at you, and you still end up crying in the closet. Here's what I want you to understand. This doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean the balance was fake. It means you're human. And humans are not machines. We don't level up and then stay there forever. We wobble.
We fall.
We get back up.
We fall again.
The victory is not in never falling. The victory is in getting back up faster each time. The science behind this is called the rebound effect. Your brain is not a fixed system. It's a dynamic, changing, sometimes chaotic network of neurons. Resilience isn't about being strong all the time. It's about how quickly you return to baseline after a stressor. Like a rubber band. Stretch it. It snaps back. Stretch it again. Still snaps back. The snap back is the miracle, not the absence of stretching. That night in the closet, I stretched. Hard. But by morning, I had snapped back. Not because I'm special. Because I had practiced. Every previous failure, every previous cry, every previous, I can't do this, had trained my brain to recover faster. David ordered the pizza. We ate it on the couch while watching a terrible movie. The kids complained about pizza 2 days in a row for exactly 4 minutes, then got distracted by the movie and forgot. I went to bed tired but not broken. The old me would have turned that closet cry into a week-long spiral. You're a failure. You can't handle motherhood. You don't deserve this life. The new me said, that was hard. You're tired. Order pizza. Try again tomorrow. That's the messy middle. And it's where most of life actually happens. You want to know what marriage really looks like? Not the dates, not the anniversaries, not the cute Instagram photos. It looks like one person crying in the closet and the other person sitting on the floor next to them, not trying to fix anything, just being present. It looks like pizza 2 nights in a row. It looks like I can't followed by then don't. My marriage is not balanced because we never fight. We fight. We disappoint each other. We say things we don't mean and then apologize. The balance is in the repair. The ability to say, I'm sorry, and actually mean it. The willingness to sit on a closet floor, even when it's uncomfortable. The knowledge that love is not about avoiding the messy middle. It's about navigating it together. The same is true for learning English. You will have days when you feel fluent, confident, unstoppable. And you will have days when you forget the word for refrigerator and want to give up forever. That's the messy middle. It doesn't mean you're not learning. It means you're learning. Progress is not a straight line up. It's a squiggly, chaotic, 2 steps forward, 1 step back mess. The people who succeed are not the ones who never have bad days. They're the ones who have a bad day, order pizza, and try again tomorrow. I keep a journal.
Not a fancy one.
A cheap notebook from Target. And every night, I write down 3 things. 1 hard thing from the day. 1 good thing. And 1 thing I learned about English. Last week's entries. Hard thing. Yelled at Lily for taking too long to put on shoes. Felt terrible after. A good thing. She forgave me within 5 minutes. Kids are amazing like that. English. Learn the difference between bored and boring. Finally. That's it.
Small.
Messy.
Real.
The closet crying doesn't make me a bad mother or a bad wife or a bad English speaker. It makes me a person who is trying. And trying is the only requirement. Here's what I want you to take from this section. If you are in the messy middle right now, frustrated with your English, exhausted by your relationship, overwhelmed by your life, you are not doing anything wrong. You are exactly where you need to be. The middle is not a failure. The middle is the work. Don't believe the people who pretend they never struggle. They're either lying or they're not growing. Growth is uncomfortable. Balance is active, not static. Love is a verb, not a noun. And language is a practice, not a product. So the next time you find yourself on the metaphorical closet floor, crying over a frozen tongue, a forgotten word, a relationship that feels too hard, remember this. The floor is not your home. It's just a rest stop. You'll get up. You'll order pizza. You'll try again. And one day, you'll look back at the closet and realize you haven't been there in months. And then, because life is funny, you'll have a bad day and end up right back there. And that will be okay too. That's the messy middle. It's not pretty, but it's where all the real living happens. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go fold that laundry from section 2. It's still there. Some things never change. The happy ending that took work. You've been waiting for the happy ending, haven't you? The part where I tell you that everything is perfect now. That my English is flawless. That my marriage is a dream. That my children never argue, and the laundry folds itself. I'm sorry to disappoint you. That ending doesn't exist. Not for me. Not for anyone. But here's what does exist. A Tuesday morning.
6:47 a.m.
I'm standing in the kitchen making coffee. David is packing lunches. He's finally learned to do it without asking where everything is. Lily is brushing her teeth while simultaneously arguing with Leo about who gets to flush the toilet. Leo is 3, so his argument is mostly screaming. The dog is barking because the mailman is not even here yet. And in the middle of this chaos, I feel something unexpected. Contentment. Not happiness. Not joy. Contentment. The quiet knowing that this messy, loud, imperfect life is exactly mine. And I wouldn't trade it for a perfect one. That's the happy ending. Not the absence of problems. The presence of peace inside the problems. Let me rewind a bit. After the closet incident, after the pizza and the tears and the winter coat, David and I had a real conversation. Not the kind you see in movies with soft lighting and meaningful pauses. The kind you have at 10 p.m. on a weeknight, both of you exhausted, sitting on a couch that smells like goldfish crackers. He said, "You're trying to do too much." I said, "I know." He said, "Why?" And I didn't have an answer. Not a good one. Because the truth was uncomfortable. I was trying to do everything because I still believed, somewhere deep and stupid, that I had to prove I deserved this life. That if I stopped being Superwoman for 1 second, someone would tap me on the shoulder and say, "Sorry, mistake. You don't actually belong here." That's the secret engine of so much burnout. The immigrant who works twice as hard to be considered half as good. The non-native speaker who apologizes for existing. The woman who performs perfect motherhood because she's terrified of being seen as a failure. I had left Mark. I had found David. I had built a family. But I hadn't left the old belief behind. The belief that love is earned, not given. That belonging is conditional. That one wrong move and everything disappears. David looked at me, really looked, and said, "You don't have to prove anything. Not to me. Not to anyone. You're already here." I wanted to believe him, but believing is not the same as knowing. Knowing takes practice. So we started practicing. Together. We made a list. Not a fancy chore chart with color coding. Just a piece of paper on the refrigerator. Things I do. Things he does. Honest, not fair. Because life isn't fair, but it can be seen. I wrote, mornings with kids, doctor appointments, groceries, homework help, emotional management of everyone, remembering birthdays, sending cards to my mom, worrying. He wrote, his job, the one with a paycheck, yard work, fixing things that break, bath time, making the kids laugh, ordering takeout, being calm when I'm not. Then we swapped one thing. Just one. He took over groceries. I stopped going to the store entirely for 3 months. And you know what happened? He bought weird brands. He forgot the cilantro twice. He once came home with gluten-free bread when no one in our house has a gluten problem. But no one died. The kids ate the weird bread. They didn't even notice. That's balance. Not equal. Not fair. Just visible. Just shared. The happy ending of this story is not that we got it right. It's that we got it wrong 1,000 times and kept adjusting. Like a bicycle. Wobble left. Wobble right. Don't fall. I want to tell you about our biggest fight. Not because it's fun. Because it's important. Last year, David's mother got sick. Really sick. The kind of sick that requires someone to drive her to appointments, sit with her during chemo, hold her hand while she cries. And David, the good son, wanted to do all of it. On top of his job. On top of parenting. On top of being my husband. I watched him disappear. Not into another woman, into responsibility. He stopped talking at dinner. He stopped laughing at my jokes. He started sleeping on the couch because he was too tired to walk upstairs. And I got angry. Not at his mom. Not at the cancer. At him. For leaving me alone. For making me do everything. For forgetting that I was here too. I said things I regret. He said things he regrets. We yelled in the kitchen while the kids were at school, and the dog hid under the table. Then we stopped. And we sat in the silence. And I said, "You're drowning." He said, "I know." I said, "Let me help." That's the happy ending. Not we never fight. That's not happy. That's denial. The happy ending is we fight, and then we help. We see each other's drowning and throw a rope, even when we're drowning a little too. I started driving his mom to appointments. Just one a week. He kept doing the rest. And something shifted. He wasn't alone anymore. And I wasn't resentful anymore. Because I had chosen to help. He hadn't demanded it. That tiny difference, choice versus obligation, changed everything. This is what Americans mean when they say happy ending. They don't mean perfect. They mean whole. They mean you go through the fire and come out the other side not unburned, but still standing. Still together. Still willing to try again tomorrow. My English is still not perfect. I said yesternight to my daughter's teacher at parent-teacher conferences last month. The teacher smiled and said, "That's charming." I decided to believe her. My marriage is still not perfect. David left his socks on the floor this morning. I stepped on them and almost fell. I did not say, "I love you" in that moment. I said, "David, your socks." He said sorry and picked them up. That's a happy ending too. My kids are still not perfect. Lily told me she hates me yesterday because I wouldn't let her have candy before dinner. 10 minutes later, she drew me a picture of a unicorn. I kept the picture. I did not keep the hate. Here's what I've learned. The happy ending is not a destination. It's a direction. You don't arrive at balance and stay there forever. And the walking itself? That's the win. I asked David the other night, "Are we balanced?" He thought about it. He doesn't answer quickly. That's one of the things I love about him. He said, "Not perfectly, but we're not broken either. We're just in the middle." And I think the middle is actually the goal. That's the American lesson, hidden inside my Vietnamese heart. You don't have to choose between independence and love. You don't have to choose between your accent and being understood. You don't have to choose between your culture and your new life. You just have to keep showing up. Keep wobbling. Keep saying yesternight and laughing about it. The happy ending is not the finish line. It's the realization that there is no finish line. There's just the road, and the people walking next to you, and the strange, beautiful, imperfect language you use to say, "I'm still here." Are you? So yes, I have a happy ending. It looks like a Tuesday morning with a barking dog and a missing sock and a daughter who corrects my grammar and a husband who sits on closet floors. It looks like chaos and love tangled together so tightly you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. And if that's not a happy ending, I don't know what is. Your balanced life. Speak English softly. We have traveled a long way together. You've heard about my bad relationships, my good marriage, my imperfect English, and my children who correct my grammar. Now it's your turn. Remember the question I asked at the very beginning? Not the one about the shower or the frozen brain. The real one. The one that changed everything for me. Are you balanced? I'm not asking if your life is perfect. I'm not asking if you speak English like a native. I'm asking if you have found that wobbling middle ground where you can love without losing yourself, speak without shame, and exist without apology. Take a moment. Really think about it. The answer might be no. That's fine. The answer might be I don't know. That's also fine. The answer might be sometimes, but not right now. That's the most honest answer of all. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to say your answer out loud. In English.
Right now.
Even if you're alone. Even if you feel ridiculous. Even if the words come out crooked. Say it slowly. Softly. Like you're telling a secret to someone you trust. I am learning to be balanced. I am not balanced yet, but I am trying. I am balanced enough for today. Did you do it? Did you actually say the words? If not, pause this video.
Say them.
I'll wait. Pause for a few seconds.
Good.
You just practiced English. Not by memorizing vocabulary. Not by conjugating verbs. By telling the truth about yourself. That's the only English practice that has ever worked for me. The kind that connects your brain to your heart to your mouth. All three working together, imperfectly, beautifully. Here's the final lesson of this entire story. You don't need more grammar books. You don't need to sound like a CNN anchor. You don't need to erase your accent or hide where you came from. What you need is balance. Balance between studying and speaking. Between perfection and progress. Between listening to others and listening to yourself. Between the person you are now and the person you want to become. Balance is not a fixed state. It's a practice. Like yoga. Like meditation. Like love. You don't wake up one day and say, I'm balanced forever. You wake up every day and say, today I will try again. Let me give you a simple practice. Something you can start today. Something that takes 5 minutes and costs nothing. Every evening, before you go to sleep, ask yourself 3 questions in English. Out loud. Softly. Like you're talking to a friend. Question 1. What went well today? You don't need a long answer. I understood a song. I ordered coffee. I didn't cry when I made a mistake. That's enough. Question 2. What was hard today? Again, short and honest. I forgot the word for refrigerator. Someone spoke too fast. I felt stupid. Name it. That's how you take away its power. Question 3. What will I try tomorrow? One small thing. Not become fluent. Something tiny. Learn 5 new words. Ask a cashier a question. Say no without apologizing. That's it. 3 questions. Every day. In English. Out loud. Do this for 30 days. Not because I told you to. Because you deserve to hear your own voice. Because your voice, with its accent, its mistakes, its beautiful foreignness, matters. Because the only way to become balanced is to practice being balanced when no one is watching. I still do this. Last night, my answers were, good, I read a story to Leo without looking up any words. Hard, I said yesternight at a work meeting and 3 people noticed. Tomorrow, I will say last night 3 times on purpose so my mouth remembers. That's not advanced English. That's not celebrity-level fluency. That's just a person practicing balance one day at a time. You might be watching this video from your bedroom in Vietnam or Brazil, or Poland, or Egypt. You might be watching from a tiny apartment in New York or a house in Texas. You might be surrounded by people who speak your first language, or you might be completely alone in an English-speaking country. It doesn't matter. The practice works anywhere, because the only place balance lives is inside you. Here's something I've never said out loud before. Not even to David. Some days I still feel like a fraud. Like someone is going to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Congratulations, you've been pretending to speak English for 10 years. Your time is up." That voice still whispers. But now I know how to answer it. I say, "Maybe, but I'm still here. And I'm still trying. And that counts." That's balance. Not the absence of fear. The ability to feel fear and keep going anyway. My daughter Lily asked me last week, "Mommy, do you like being a mom?" I said, "Yes, but it's hard." She said, "How can you like something that's hard?" I thought about it. Then I said, "Because the hard parts make the good parts better. If it was easy all the time, I wouldn't notice how much I love you." She accepted that answer. Then she asked for a snack. That's the truth about balance, about love, about language, about everything that matters. The hard parts are not the enemy. They are the contrast that makes the good parts visible. Without the struggle, you wouldn't feel the triumph. Without the mistakes, you wouldn't recognize the moments when you get it right. So here we are, at the end of the story. But not the end of your story. Your story is still being written. Every time you speak, you add a sentence. Every time you try, you add a page. Every time you fall and get back up, you add a chapter. I don't know what your ending looks like, but I know this. You are capable of more than you believe. You are stronger than your fear. You are already enough. Not when your English is perfect, but right now, in this moment, with every mistake and every accent and every forgotten word. The only thing left to do is speak. So, let's practice together. One last time. Repeat after me. Slowly. Out loud. I am balanced enough for today. Beautiful. Again. I am balanced enough for today. One more time, this time like you mean it. I am balanced enough for today. That's your new sentence. Say it every morning. Say it every night. Say it when you're scared. Say it when you're proud. Say it when you forget the word for refrigerator. And remember, you are not alone. There are millions of us, speaking English as a second, third, or fourth language, all wobbling together. All trying. All enough. Thank you for walking this journey with me. You've listened to my tears, my mistakes, my closets, and my pizza. Speak directly, warm, but with a spark of mystery. So, you made it to the end. You heard about my closets, my pizza dinners, my yesternight, and my crooked English. But here's the truth I didn't tell you yet. This story isn't over. Because balance isn't a one-time lesson. It's a daily battle. And next week, I'm going to show you what happened when my American mother-in-law moved in with us for 3 months. Spoiler, nobody was balanced. Not me. Not David. Especially not the dog. You don't want to miss that. Because real English practice isn't about perfect grammar. It's about surviving real life in slow, simple, honest words. So here's your invitation. Hit that subscribe button. Tap the bell so YouTube tells you when the next story drops. And leave me a comment. Are you balanced today? 1 word. 2 words. Broken English. Perfect English. I don't care. I just want to hear your voice. This channel is for people who are tired of pretending, who want to learn English by living real stories, not memorizing scripts.
Subscribe now.
The next chapter starts soon. And remember, you are balanced enough for today. See you in the next video.